Good afternoon. I'm Carl Edwards. I'm standing in for our chairman, Pete White, who's unable to be here today. I'd like to call the meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust to order. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the August 2nd, 2016 meeting, and I would ask for a motion to that effect.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. We have a consent docket covering a number of items. Are there any questions regarding various items on the consent docket?
I'd move the consent docket subject to individual consideration.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. There is nothing on the concurrence docket today, so we'll move into items for individual consideration. First one is a resolution approving the settlement and authorizing the chairman, secretary, and general counsel of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust or their designees to sign the agreement and documents attached thereto, and to sign such other documents and pleadings as advised by the general counsel or his designee as being necessary for the implementation of the settlement or the forced settlement of the cases filed in the United States District Court for the Western District of Oklahoma, case number CIV 11-927, styled Chickasaw Nation and Choctaw Nation v. Fallon et al., and case number CIV 12-275, styled OWRB versus United States et al. and or. No. Mr. Couch, would you like to say anything before we...
Yeah, I would. I'd like to give a little history on this project. It really was authorized by Congress in '74 for primarily municipal water purposes, and it was a contract between the federal government and the state of Oklahoma. And for years, the state of Oklahoma made sporadic payments for Lake Sardis, and there were times that they didn't pay for several years, and they'd catch up, and then they wouldn't pay, and they ended up in a lawsuit with the federal government over payments not made, and the federal government prevailed and had a judgment against the state of Oklahoma for Sardis. And so in 2010, the city of Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust negotiated with the state and stepped in to satisfy the obligations. It was $27 million at that time, and pay off the debt on Sardis Lake, with the understanding that we'd be transferred the storage rights and the opportunity to have water rights associated with that to bring water up to Oklahoma City to supplement us in the future. Also during the time, there's been a dispute between the state of Oklahoma and the Choctaw Nation and the Chickasaw Nation as to who has authority over water, who gets to issue permits, who gets to establish water quality standards. And that was going on, has been going on for quite some time. When we entered into the agreement with the state to purchase the storage water rights, or the storage rights, that caused a lawsuit to be filed by the Chickasaws and the Choctaws against the state, the city, and the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. And so we've been through a settlement process for about 5 years now, and have come to an agreement, and the agreement has several points to it. Number one is that the state of Oklahoma retains authority for issuing water right permits in this treaty territory. And it also grandfathers existing permits in this area. And that provides certainty for present users and future users as to the processes that are there and how to get water. The Choctaws and the Chickasaws also have been granted a seat at the table by the settlement for future water permits, water transfer agreements, and there's a process in place to set up a group of people that would make technical recommendations to the Water Resources Board made up of representatives from the state and the nations. So that's one of the agreements, so that they have a voice in those water permit applications and water transfers. We've agreed to minimum stream flows in the Kiamichi River, which is important to the Choctaws and the Chickasaws for environmental purposes. We've agreed to a lake level management plan, which is very strong. It maintains Sardis probably at its fullest practical level as we can do that, and yet allowing for water to be adequate for Oklahoma City. It allows for Oklahoma City to have a certain amount of water and storage rights that will yield about 110,000 acre-feet of water on average to Oklahoma City, 97% firm yield. Presently, we use about 130,000 acre-feet on an annual basis, so another 110 on top of that is quite a bit of water for future Oklahoma Cityans, but it's just not Oklahoma City, it's all the folks that we sell water to. And beyond the suburbs, it also provides water for those along the pipeline, Atoka, Colgate, several water districts, and also provides, by the way, set aside some water around for local use around Lake Sardis itself. We will have to construct an additional water line from Atoka to Draper, and you're going to get a report on that in just a few minutes, which is in the $600+ million range, and then we're going to also have to construct a water line when we need the water from Sardis to Atoka, which is another $150 or so million on top of that. We probably don't need the water for a number of years. It's going to be 10 to 15 years before we actually need that water, and so we'll have time to complete those major projects. It also allows, presently state law does not allow for sale of water outside of the state of Oklahoma, and this sets forth a framework if that state law is changed as to how to handle a proposed sale of water outside of Oklahoma, and the terms, conditions, and if money was to come forth, how that would be handled, which is not Oklahoma City's concern necessarily. It's between the state and the nations. And then finally, to finalize this, it does have to be approved by Congress, so that even though the five parties, the Water Trust, the city, the Choctaws, Chickasaws, and the state have all agreed to this, it still has to be ratified through a congressional process. And we may be able to do that in lame duck session this fall. We're going to try to do that. If not, it'll go into the next term of Congress. Brian Nazarinas is here today. He's been our outside counsel on this for a number of years, and he's going to tell you everything that I didn't tell you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Brian Nazarinas. I've been working on this matter for the last 5 years with Mr. Couch, Craig Keith, and also Marcia Slaughter and others for the city. I think Mr. Couch summarized the settlement well as far as the framework of it. The thing that, a couple of things that strike me about it my whole career has been in water resources. The first is just the leadership that the city has had on this project. Mr. Couch, Mr. Keith, and Ms. Slaughter, again, and other support from the staff in terms of being able to visualize this opportunity and to advance it for the betterment of the city and the long-term future of the city. The second, and by this opportunity I particularly mean Sardis Lake. Secondly, there are a lot of projects, municipal water projects of this type that I've seen in my career and read about where people have great visions and then they run aground. We're not there yet, but we are far farther along than all the projects that I have in mind. I mean, it's remarkable to me how successful this has been when you look at what has happened since 2010, 2009, when the city started entering the Sardis negotiations. And I think it's a tribute to leadership, the city, and then also to the other parties that were at the table, the state and the nations, and their willingness to negotiate a constructive resolution of this. So I appreciate for the opportunity to have represented you on this, and we're not across the goal line, but we're approaching the end, and it really has been a great project to work on. So thank you. Is there questions for me?
Thank you. I have a question?
No, I just want to comment, though, that the Water Resources Board approved this agreement on Friday. The Choctaw Nation approved it on Saturday. Council approved it this morning. And the Chickasaws approved
yesterday.
They did approve it yesterday?
Well,
we think they approved it yesterday. We haven't heard yet. We believe they did.
We would have heard otherwise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll recognize a motion to approve the resolution. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to do this. It passes. Thank you. Is there a reason to enter into executive session? No. Someone make a motion to not move into? Don't need that. Okay. Any items from trustees? We'll move to the general manager's reports.
Larry Hare, our design engineer for the Atoka Pipeline Project, will provide you with an update on the project.
Good afternoon. I'll wait until the screen comes down so that everybody else can see what's going on with the presentation here. My name is Larry Hare. I'm the Raw Water Design Manager for the Water Utilities Department, and I'm going to give you an update of what we have been doing with the second Atoka pipeline. I'm going to briefly discuss, what the current system is, what the system engineer has been doing, as well as what the design engineer has been doing, and an updated schedule of what's to come in the future. To briefly summarize our system, we have 100 miles of concrete pipe that is 60-inch in diameter from Atoka to Draper. That was built along with the Atoka and Draper reservoirs in the 1960s. Also, as a part of our current raw water system is the McGee Creek pipeline, which is a little over 17 miles of steel pipe and a pump station at the reservoir to bring water from McGee Creek Reservoir into Lake Atoka. In roughly 2009, we started our engineer activities with CDM Smith. They had come up with the conceptual design of the different portions of the Atoka pipeline as well as a phased system. And we are now working toward the implementation of bringing in a second pipeline from the Atoka Reservoir to Draper. So far, they were tasked to complete a design-ready topographical survey for the design engineers to work off of to create their plans and specifications. That has now been completed, as well as the first volume of the design standards manual for the pipeline, which contained CAD standards on how to present the information in a consistent manner for everyone to see, as well as basic design elements, which includes things like where in the easement will the pipeline be located, how deep will the pipeline be constructed, things of that nature. And these were submitted to the design engineers on July 18th, 2016. At the same time, CDM Smith has been doing a pipe procurement evaluation report, which we hope will be due in November of this year, which contains not only how are we going to procure the pipe, but also on packaging the bid projects and construction sequencing for them. They're also undertaking hydraulic and surge modeling activities, which will provide needed information not only in sizing of pumps for pump stations, but also for the thickness of the design for the pipeline itself. And that should wrap up in 2017 or February of 2017, along with the design standards manual, which will wrap up all that information to be presented to the design engineers. That will cover design also for steel and concrete pipe. They are also working on designing at least 3 new pump stations along the pipeline, and hopefully that design will be done in July of 2018, which will include a new pump station at the Atoka Reservoir, as well as 2 new pump stations at the Stonewall and Conowa sites. The new pump station at Atoka, is what we have affectionately termed as Pump Station O, allows direct transfer from water from the McGee Creek pipeline, as well as the new pipeline from the Kiamichi Basin, to either go into Lake Atoka or to be transferred directly into Lake Stanley Draper without pause. It will also have the capability of transferring water from the existing pump station at Atoka and bringing water down the new pipeline in case something happens to the existing concrete line. Meanwhile, on the design engineer side, we have hired 8 engineers to do 9 different projects for us along the pipeline. And they were broken up into segments, basically along each pump station site, more or less. Cabinets Engineering has gotten the first piece from Atoka to Colgate, and CP&Y got it from Colgate to Stonewall. Olson Engineers has the pipeline from the Stonewall pump station to Ada. From Ada to Kanawha, we have split that up in basically 2 design elements, one going to Triad as well as the river crossing on the Canadian River, and the northern part going to Johnson Associates. From Kanawha to Macomb was also a very long stretch that we decided to cut in 2 pieces. The first piece going to Guernsey and the northern piece going to the MacArthur. And then the final piece going from Macomb to the Draper Reservoir would go to Smith Roberts Ballishwater. The design engineers were issued their notice to proceed, or the work order for task number 1, which will include design 35% design. They were issued that in April 26, but they weren't able to do much until we got the information from the system engineer, which, as I said, was provided to them on July 18th. We gave them roughly a week to chew that data over, and then on July 26th, we had everyone meet with the system engineer, CDM Smith, to go over the first volume of the design standards. The 35% design, and after this meeting, this pretty much started everybody's clock ticking, because we anticipate this part of the design to last for around 90 days, and it will cover basic design for steel and concrete pipe, as well as it lets the design engineers to go forth with their geotechnical and corrosion investigations to figure out what kind of soil conditions the pipe will be laid in, as well as how to haul pipe and access routes to their particular segments of the design. Following design, or the first task is task number 2, which will be design up to the 65% design level, and that will last also another 90 days. And in this task, we anticipate the easement documents that may be needed to gather more easement or more property and design and construction of the pipeline if needed. The design engineers will also participate in a design review with the system engineer to ensure that the design engineers are pretty closely following, or not exactly following, the design manuals provided by the system engineer. And at 65%, the design engineers will give us pipe quantities for the procurement process. And in that procurement process is when the system engineer, there's a lot of moving pieces to this thing. The system engineer will gather those quantities, and then we will either put those package for the pipe procurement either as a bid between concrete and steel pipe or as a pricing agreement. That has yet to be determined because the system engineer is still working upon that aspect. Once we figure out who the manufacturer will be for the pipeline, task number 3 will be issued for the design engineers to go to their 100% design level and produce their bid documents, which will last roughly around 120 days. Here's a schedule of what has happened and what we believe is going to happen within the next 3 years or 2 years. As you can see, the design ready survey has been completed. The steady state hydraulics, all the hydraulic modeling and the surge modeling is still underway. I'd like to point out that the blue color are the system engineer activities. The green color is for the design engineer activities. So the design engineers have been given their first work order to begin their 35% design levels. The system engineer is still going through their second volume of the design standards, and once that is delivered, then this shows that the second task order will be given to the design engineers to begin the 65%. And this schedule of activities right here represents their level of effort as well as the design review and time enough for the design engineers to address the system engineer comments. This area in pink describes pretty much the procurement of the pipe process. The system engineer is providing us a report on how to purchase the pipe. The second line is actually going through the details of purchasing the pipe. Around November of 2017 is when we anticipate we can award contract for the purchase of pipe and start the design engineers for their 100% design, and then go ahead and advertise and award the first round of construction projects for installation of the pipeline in 2018. And with that, I will take any questions.
Looks like none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mallory and Robert are here with their water conservation program, and we have reports on that. And it's basically that we've done irrigation updates, working with the local businesses and Oklahoma City Beautiful and Toro and Rainbird have provided free assistance on the medians. And the next item, Mallory, would you like to talk about the U.S. EPA?
So we have a partnership with the WaterSense program through the EPA, and they recently provided a certificate of appreciation to the Utilities Department of Oklahoma City for providing our data from the program from this year. It's a great partnership and resource for our customers. They give us a lot of resources for our website, for social media, and just some great talking points for presentations. So we are going to continue that partnership through this year.
Congratulations.
And Dustin, would you like to talk about the lake level update?
Good afternoon. The graph that is in the report, it was created on August 4th. At that time, the lake level was at 1180.89. Today's lake level is at 1180.69. So within, 12 days or so, that we've only lost 0.2 feet in the lake, and that's hopefully because of the cooler weather that we're doing. And also the reason why we're not gaining as much is because we're in the summer pumping scheme, is we're doing 60 million gallons off-peak time, and then 30 million gallons a day during the peak times to be able to help save some electricity costs. And with the chart, what you show is we see the black line shows the significant down drop of the water level, of the lake level, because we're in the summer months and everything. But looking at the trend and the pattern in the weather patterns, it looks like that we'll be cooling off in the season and everything, and that we'll be able to regain. The normal operating level of the lake is between 1185 and 1188, so that way we can help control erosion. And so if everything goes right, it appears that we'll be seeing those levels in early February of next year. So everything is looking well. But the pipeline is continuing to doing well, and if it continues to pump like we are doing, then we'll be able to recover from the lake. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Status report of the Utilities Department for July of 2016.
Lakes are really good for this time of year.
Yeah, we're really pleased with the fact that we have plenty of water in all the lakes, and not only are good for running a water utility, but for recreational users.
Do you have anything else relative to that?
No.
Are there any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, we are adjourned.